Hey everyone. Today we are continuing working on our Frankenshapes project, and our job today will be to measure all of the important parts of the shapes that make up my Frankenshape. So in here I have circles and parts of circles, I have a big square and some triangles. So we need to measure all the important things. To figure out what's important, I recommend looking at your cheat sheet. So our job is going to be eventually to calculate the area of our Frankenshape. Therefore, we need all of the parts of our area formulas in order to find that. So for any squares or rectangles, you'd want to measure the length and the width. For any triangles, you would want to measure the base and the height. Remembering that in a right triangle, the height is an outside line. It's one of the legs, that's what it's called in the triangle, one of the sides, and the base is also a side. But also, if you don't have a right triangle, the height of your triangle is actually going to be in the center, as if you could drop a straight line down to the base. I'll give you an example in my Frankenshape. My triangles here are not right triangles, right? I'm using like this, those 3 points are making up my triangle. So I'm going to choose a side to be the base. And for me, I like this side as my base. Just because it's the longest one, that's my only choice really. And then the height of this triangle is going to be as if I went from this top point, you can't see that, this top point, if I went straight down here. So that is the measurement for my height that I would use. So your triangles, you need to make sure you're thinking about, is it a right triangle or not? And where am I gonna find my base and my height? Next, we should have some circles or parts of circles. So we'll need to use the area formula, area equals pi r squared. So that r is our radius. We'll need to know that. But when I try to measure the radius of a circle, it's super hard to know where the center is. So here is my trick for you. When you're measuring a circle, find the diameter to then find the radius. So that's a big tip for circles. Measure the diameter and then cut it in half after. Now, I don't exactly know where the center of my circle is here either, and we know the diameter goes through that, but you can get a much better estimate going about it this way. So I'm going to do my very best and look, okay, this looks like it's going to be where my diameter goes, and I could measure it a few times to, make sure I'm getting that same measurement for diameter all the way around. Now you might be asking, do I measure, say you have a ruler, do I measure in centimeters? So on many rulers, they actually mark millimeters, but this is the centimeter side. There are about 30 centimeters on a ruler, well, exactly 30 centimeters marked on a ruler. And the millimeter is marking those little lines in between. The other side of your ruler has the inches on it. So it actually says 1/16 an inch, and we'll talk about that in a second, but there is the word inch there, and there are 12 inches on your most rulers. So here are my tips for you. If you can, measure in centimeters. And we'll talk about how to do both, but if you can measure in centimeters, it's actually the easier one to measure in. It's not the one that we use mostly in the United States, but many countries in the world use centimeters, and it's for a good reason. It's a pretty helpful way to measure. So when I'm thinking about centimeters, 1 centimeter, that much space, about the size of my finger, is broken up into 10 little parts. There are 10 sections marked out on a centimeter. And then the one in the middle would be for half a centimeter. And then each of these would be a tenth. So that would be 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, or a half, and so on. So let's measure my diameter for this circle in centimeters. So when I measure here, it looks like to me I get to 7 full centimeters and 1, 2, 3, 4 tenths of another one. So my diameter that I got above was 7 4 tenths centimeters. For our project, I'm not definitely going to want to measure using fractions. I prefer to use a decimal. So I'm going to write this measurement as a decimal. And the reason why this is so much easier is because 4 tenths is just 0.4. So it's pretty easy to go from fraction form to decimal form when you're measuring in centimeters because each little line marks out 1/10. But some of us are only going to have a way to measure in inches. So maybe you have a measuring tape that's only in inches, or maybe you have a ruler that just has inches on it. So you're going to measure in inches for this project, and that's fine. I mean, that's what most, that's how we calculate things in the US. So an inch is a bigger amount of space. It's actually about 2.5 centimeters big. And on an inch, you'll notice there are a lot more little sections. So on most things, they let you measure to 1/16 of an inch. They give you 16 separate sections inside of an inch to get really exact. So if here's a full inch, here's 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch. The lines are normally a little bit bigger, 1/4 of an inch. But then these lines in between, you could think of this as 1/16, 2/16, 3/16, 4/16, which is equal to a fourth, 5/16, 6/16, 7/16, 8/16, which is equal to a half. So as you count each line, you're counting another 16th. Let's measure our diameter of our circle in inches this time. We're going to expect the measurement to be smaller because inches are bigger, so we'll take fewer of them. But if I use the inch side of my ruler, I line it up with 0. Oh goodness, I wish it was closer, but I get to 1, 2, and then almost 3 full inches. So I'm at 2 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 sixteenths of an inch. I counted all the way to that line. Okay, so 2 and 15 sixteenths inches. Great measurement. I was being as precise as I could be. But like before I said, hey, I'll probably want to measure in, not using fractions, but using decimals. So, okay, I'm gonna turn this number into a decimal, and I see that it's 2, and I might be tempted to write something like 0.15 for the 15th, 16th. But that's not how it works. We're not broken up into 10 equal sections, so we can't use tenths. We need to change 15 sixteenths into its decimal form, which means we need to divide 15 by 16. So grabbing my calculator, I'm going to do just that. 15 divided by 16 is 0.9375. So when I measure in inches, I have 2.9375 inches for that diameter. When you're measuring for your project, you choose which one you measure in centimeters or inches and stick with that one the whole time. You want your measurements to all be in that same unit. All right, so those are my tips for you. Good luck measuring all the shapes of your Frankenshape for our project.